Hey guys, Christian Murray here, publisher at the Queen's Post. Today I'm going to be talking to John Ciafone. He's a candidate for the 22nd Council District that covers Astoria and parts of Woodside, Jackson Heights, and East Elmhurst. Hi John, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Christian Murray, for having me. It's my pleasure.
You're very welcome. So John, could you tell us why you're running for office and a little bit about yourself and your involvement in the community?
Yes, I've run for office several times in the past. This is my third attempt for city council. I tell you, I didn't want to run this time. I had no plans. I just entered this race recently. As you could see, I just started my campaign several days ago. Obviously, it's not enough time, but I've entered the race because alarm bells have gone off in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I am startled with how our elected officials, particularly the city council, has dealt with crime in our community. These past 2 weeks, we've had 3 shootings in our neighborhood, 2 deaths, one an innocent woman with 2 children, a religious abiding woman was shot and killed. And I go down Steinway Street and I see her notices, wanted for the information for the finding of the perpetrators. Now, we know it's gangs because that's what's been reported. And why do we have gang violence? Well, it's because our elected officials have failed us. They've changed the bail reform law. Now, you needed some kind of bail reform, Christian, because you had situations where people couldn't put up $200 or $300 that a judge said you had to post. And that was ridiculous to put them in Rikers Island, to keep them days, whether they jumped a turnstile or did something minor. It was foolish. But what happened was, as with anything else, legislators tend to do, they went too far. They went too far by saying very serious crimes, you don't have to post bail. Now, it was reported a few days ago in one of the city newspapers, a gentleman by the name of Rakeem Wilson, a young 19-year-old kid. He was arrested 5 times for gun possession, 5 times for gun possession. And each time he was let out. And only until the last arrest did the judge say, well, I'm going to remand him, put him back in and keep him in the system because he poses a threat to society. You can't have a cookie cutter approach to crime. Judges have to be the people accountable. You see, the problem with the bail reform system, Christian, is that they haven't thought it out. And they had a great model in New Jersey. New Jersey, for the most part, does it right because it allows the judge to make a determination based on its discretion, his or her discretion, whether that person stays in or not. Mm-hmm. Christian, there are certain people that shouldn't be out on the streets. We've seen them. All you got to do is open the newspaper, watch the news. The guy who assaulted, the homeless guy who assaulted an Asian woman, kicking her, punching her. I mean, this is a person who I think has mental problems, emotionally disturbed individuals. There are people that shouldn't be out in the street. We can't keep a revolving door and let people in and out. It's not right. And to have a cookie cutter approach to say everyone goes out is doing society harm. And we see the effects here. There's a tremendous deterioration in our neighborhood. I see it in my neighborhood in terms of crime, major deterioration. The crime has gone up. Shootings have gone up 97%. There are more guns on the street than ever before. And then you get these progressive socialist communist people who say, well, we've got to have a war on guns, right? But yet they're hypocrites. Why? Because they're allowing these criminals with these gun histories out in our communities without bail, without remanding them. So don't tell me you want to control gun violence and control guns in our neighborhoods when you're being disingenuous by allowing these very same individuals out in our community without any punishment or any discretion by a judge. That's unacceptable. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running, because Christian, I grew up. I'm born and raised in this neighborhood. I was born at Boulevard Hospital on 31st Avenue, not too far from where those shootings had occurred. I went to the public schools in our neighborhood. I've worked in this neighborhood all my life. This is a great neighborhood, but I see a serious deterioration. Um, People can't take the subways because they're afraid that an emotionally disturbed person is going to shove them into the tracks. I mean, what kind of society are we living in? Where is justice? Justice is not just for the few. Justice should be for the many, for everybody. And 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 what I see now is a tremendous assault not only on the police, the demonization of the police, but society. I went to public school, Long Island City High School, the old Long Island City High School, which is now the newcomer school. And in the 80s, late 80s, we'd come out of school, Christian, at 3 o'clock, and you saw swarms of prostitutes in the area. 3 o'clock in the daytime. 3 o'clock in the daytime, there were swarms of prostitutes. The crack epidemic, the needles in the streets. These people, these so-called progressive socialist communists, don't understand that. They don't understand the history. History is important. History is important because if you don't study history, you will repeat it. And by all of this cancel culture and let's start out this way, they negate history and they fail to realize that we don't need to go back to where we were in the 1970s, early 80s, when crime was really rampant throughout our communities. We had graffiti on the subways. The trains were, like today, unsafe to take. People were afraid to go out at night. We're seeing it in our community, and that's just unacceptable. And government has an obligation. We pay our taxes, Christian. Government has an obligation to protect each and every citizen, and they're failing us at this point.
Okay, John. I mean, some of the things that you mentioned just now, bail reform, obviously those are things that are determined by the state, changes that have, happened in the last couple of years in Albany. What would you propose in terms of, your platform is public safety, clearly? What would you propose then, given if you were to be in the council and given the powers that a council person has?
It's a good point. The bail reform law was passed by the Assembly and the Senate and signed by our governor. But, these ideas were born and raised in the city. And let's just look at what the city council did recently. They have abridged the powers of the police. They are constantly demasculating the police. They just passed a law where a police officer has to get its own insurance, where up until now, qualified government immunity applies to judges, it applies to city council people, it applies to legislators. Why are they carving out that for the police officer, the average police officer? It's unacceptable. They are demonizing, the New York City Council is demonizing the police department, defunding the police. We shouldn't be defunding the police. Yes, I agree with their notion that there is waste, but there's waste in every city agency and bureaucratic system. Of course there's waste. But we cannot afford to demonize the police, Christian. We cannot afford to handcuff them so that they will not help us. These people think that when there's an emergency and you call 911, what do they think? Social workers are going to respond? Now, Christian, in addition to being an attorney for over 25 years, I'm an EMS individual who's volunteered. Mm-hmm. Many a times I won a COVID-19 award for my work with COVID. But I realized that when we get calls on scene, and most of the times it's the ED persons, emotionally disturbed persons. These are the people that often at times are dangerous individuals. You'll show up, they'll have a knife, they'll have a bat, they'll have some kind of weapon, even guns. You need to have the police respond because these are the very same people that you see in the streets, assaulting innocent individuals, pushing people into the subways. These are the emotionally disturbed people, and you need to have the police respond. a lot of the candidates say, no, we need to have social workers respond, EMTs respond. That's not enough. I've seen firsthand why it's not enough. You need to have the backing and the protection of the police, because these are people that are very dangerous and can be very dangerous.
John, do you
And
think?
to sell the police short, which the city council has done,
Hmm.
is unacceptable, and it's contributing to our crime problem today, Christian, particularly in Council District 22, where you had 3 shootings in approximately 2 weeks with 2 people dead.
I mean, that's kind of on the border of 22 and 26, but it's right there. Okay. I mean, so what would you advocate for then to get on top of this crime that you see? I mean,
Well,
most of
you know,
the crime statistics I've seen is shootings are up and homicides are up, but pretty much everything else is, down actually. So what are your thoughts
well,
on that?
I talk to merchants. I go up and down Steinway Street,
Yeah.
and merchants are really upset because people are going into stores and robbing, taking things and stuff like that. And now the criminal justice system in New York City they don't prosecute unless you take an item worth more than $250.
So
Now, who's going to
what
be
do you plan
selling
on
items
doing,
more than
John?
$250? What's that?
What's your solution to all of this in the council?
Well, you've
Mhm.
got to have strong police presence. You've got to have respect for the police.
Mhm.
You know, it's like telling a kid in school, don't respect your teacher. Do whatever you want. Don't respect your teacher. Your teacher's the enemy. Demonizing the teacher. How are you going to have a functioning school system? My point is how we have to look at the future, our posterity. We have to teach children values and principles. We have laws and rules in our society for the purpose of protecting people. That's what government is about. If we're going to eliminate the rules and laws, if we're going to allow this to become Dodge City, where people run around with guns, or where gangs control the areas as opposed to police, then we're going to have chaos and anarchy, which a lot of these people, that's their goal, is to have chaos and anarchy. That's what they want. Um, in our race, we have, I'm not going to mention her name, but she's the anointed candidate. She's got everyone endorsing her. Every elected official is endorsing her. And she has a platform. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. It says that she is espousing a radical, those are her words, a radical philosophy where the leftist socialist will take control of the city council and change the dynamics of the city. Radical change. Um, I've seen the changes already right now, and it's taken us downhill pretty quickly. I would be afraid to take this any further. My logo, my campaign logo is to stand up and fight to save our community, and that's why I'm running. Because if this is allowed to continue, if this train is allowed to continue in this fashion, we're going to be destroyed. Our
John,
businesses are suffering.
do you,
Our community is suffering. There's no excuse for this. We listen. There are bad police officers. I've seen them, and I've gone after them in civil cases. But Christian, there are bad lawyers. There are bad judges. There are bad doctors. There are bad teachers. There are bad priests.
yeah.
So basically, we can't we can't whitewash the police by saying they're all bad and let's get rid of them. It's the progressive. So if you read their platform, it's based on a book on revolution that all police are prejudiced. All police are racist. That's not the case. Christian, in our city, we have a good mixture of minorities in the police department. We have African Americans, we have Latinos, we have Asians, we have Muslims. We have a very good mix of people in the police department. Of course, we need to get more, and they need to get up into higher positions of the police department. But they are reflective, for the most part, of society, of our community. And we cannot afford to demonize them because we're all going to suffer. Our businesses are going to suffer. Our schools are going to suffer. Our communities are going to suffer. Our people are going to suffer. Our community is only as good as the safety of our community. and the
John,
safety is really in the hands of the police.
do you think your message will resonate in Astoria of 2021? I mean,
I hope so.
yeah,
I hope so, Christian, because it's a very important issue. If you ask me what's the number one issue, there's no question to me, it's crime. And again, you feel it, you see it. It's very, very upsetting. We were one of the safest cities in the country not too long ago. And again, there's no question they're bad police, but there's ways of going after them, of prosecuting them, of firing them, of suing them.
okay,
But you can't paint a broad brush approach and say, no, the police are our enemy, because we're going to suffer. We're going to suffer. I remember as a young kid, I would go with my uncle to the 114th Police Precinct community meetings. It was a great thing. We would interact with the police officers, with the captain, with the sergeant. And then one of the great things I remember as a young kid where the police would patrol on bikes. We don't see that anymore, but they would go out on bicycles and you would develop a rapport with the police officer. They would call you by the first name, your first name. You'd call them by the first name. There was a collegiality about that. That has come to an end. And we've got to bring that back. We've got to bring that alliance back. It's important for our community.
all right, John. I'm going to have to move on. Um, Sort of tangentially related to law and order. What are your views on Rikers Island? It's in the district. Do you think it
Yeah.
should be transformed into sort of renewable energy hub, or do you think it should remain a prison, or what are your thoughts?
Great question. I think it was a mistake by the city council and the mayor to try to close it based on the Lippman report. There's no question. Rikers Island is not a great place. As an attorney who's gone in there many times, I couldn't even count. It's very depressing. It takes the whole day to go in and go out. You go through various searches of your person, and you see basically a jail system that is in a third world. You would see something like that in the third world. Why it's gotten so bad is beyond me. Why our government, our city agencies could not upgrade Rikers Island the way it should be is beyond me. But that reflects years and years of neglect. And however, we cannot afford to close it because essentially this city is bankrupt as far as I'm concerned. And now they're proposing building 4 jails, right, in 4 boroughs. They don't have the money to do it yet, but they're proposing to do it. And Christian, they're proposing to build multi-story jails. Now, there were studies I read that jails that are created in a multi-level are not really beneficial to the prison inmates. What's unique about Rikers is it's a campus setting. There's plenty of outdoor space, and there's plenty of real estate there to develop new buildings, construct new buildings, upgrade the buildings, and provide the services that are needed to those who are in prison. A lot of the young kids that wind up in Rikers Island, they need the most help we need to give them because they wind up meeting gang members and getting involved in gangs as a way to survive living in those communities, in that Rikers Island community. It is very dangerous when you're in the prison system and you have to befriend certain groups and you have to stay away from other groups. People don't understand that. And the gangs have flourished because of that. They've got more members in because of that. And we've got to have opportunities for these younger people that have been unfortunately got into the system to give them the opportunity, the training, vocational training, educational training, but something that will help them get out of that particular situation. The mistake that they might have made, we can review, but we need to make sure that they get an opportunity to have a better life. And in Rikers Island, we have the space to do that. There's a lot of land. Like I said, there's a lot of areas for them to run. If you build multi-level buildings, there's going to be no recreational space for these prison inmates. There's not going to be enough resources that should be devoted to them. It's a big mistake to close. In addition, you're limiting the capacity of jails. So what if we have a big surge in crime and we don't have enough space to put these criminals or prisoners? What are we going to do? Put them in hotels like the mayor has with homeless people? That's what's going to happen. So it is a big mistake to close Rikers.
Hmm.
We have nothing else that compares to Rikers. We need to improve the money that they want to spend to build the 4 jails. That money should be redirected to rebuild Rikers Island to make it a suitable facility for the prisoners, for the correction officers,
Okay.
for the visitors, and the family members of the prisoners. And that's the best location to have it.
Okay,
To
John.
say we want to
We're gonna
create
have to
an
move on a bit.
environmental thing is,
Okay,
go
John.
ahead.
You've mentioned schools quite a bit. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
schools? And you've talked about schools
yeah, yeah.
and how they've
Schools are
been
very important.
open in COVID or closed in COVID.
Yeah,
So can you just talk a little bit
very
about that?
important. Yes, I was on the community school board. I was elected twice with the highest number of votes. I served as president of the board, and I saw a lot of things. Um, the UFT is a great union for its members, the teachers, but they're not great for students and parents. And in this city, they have been successful in keeping kids out of school during COVID. And I think it's been a tremendous disservice to our children. Our kids have lost almost 2 years of schooling, Christian, because of COVID. And now it's not anyone's fault. I mean, we're in the pandemic, but we need to get our kids back into schools.
Hmm.
And the medical science research says, our experts, Dr. Fauci says the kids should be back in school. They should be back in school. So why are we stopping our kids from being back in school? The hypocrisy again. The kids in District 22, the kids in Astoria Housing, Ravenswood, Queensbridge, these kids don't have the luxury of a computer or the luxury of having an internet service. They don't have that. And so we are damaging those kids. We're damaging their future. We're causing them to be depressed, suicidal. You see the stories. Be addicted to drugs because they've lost that socialization of having to go to school and to interact with children. They're losing the education battle. But why is this happening? Because we have politicians, Christian, that don't have the guts to stand up to a union and say, listen, enough is enough. Our kids are our future. They're our priority. The future of the city lies in our young children to take us into the next level. And why are we causing this, what I would call child abuse, to occur on a regular basis? It's unacceptable. But it's a lack of courage that our elected officials have and people have that run for office that are afraid to challenge. When I was on the school board, I battled with the UFT. I battled, and that's why I had the respect of parents and children in our schools, because that's the right thing to do.
Okay. Now moving on to a different topic, John. Uh,
Yes.
I know you've done a lot. You're quite big in the real estate world. You've got a few,
Yeah.
large buildings out there, etc. So, you know, you're knowledgeable on these topics. So, what do you think about the ULIP process? The rezoning process.
Yeah. It's a good
What are your
question.
thoughts on that?
Excuse me. The ULIP process is a process that enables developers to build beyond the zoning restrictions.
Hmm.
It's a loophole. And why it's a loophole is because you, Christian, if you own a 2-family house, you would love to build 11 stories above your house. Why? Because, Christian, you'd be an instant millionaire if you could build 11 stories above your house. Why do we allow certain people that own certain properties to do that? Well, they have access to lobbyists. They have access to high-priced lawyers. They have the ability to influence politicians with donations so they can get to do these things. I think it's wrong. If you buy a piece of property, you pay for what the property is worth, the particular zoning, your ability to build whatever you can on the property. Why should, like I said, why should you give someone a lottery ticket, a winning lottery ticket, to go beyond what they can do? It's not fair. It's not fair. And I'm against it because they say, well, the community boards have a say. They don't have any say. The process can be, they can be co-opted by the mayor, by the local city council person, by city planning. So we give certain people who have money certain access and certain rights, and that needs to be changed. The ULEP process needs to be changed because it's not an honest process. It's a loophole for
So, John,
certain people to develop more than what they should have.
so are you saying no spot rezonings at all then?
I'm saying when you rezone,
Hmm.
I would rezone certain areas if I was elected to city council.
No, but
I
John,
would
are you
rezone up
talking
and I would
about
rezone
particular?
down. But I wouldn't. But I don't think it's fair. And we could talk about maybe what you've mentioned, 3002, Newtown, right? That where
Yeah.
they want to develop 11 stories in an area where the zoning gives you 5 stories. Why do they have to go to 11 stories? Why should one piece of property have more than the other pieces of property, have more development, more FAR than other pieces of property? Because again, they've been able to gain access to a certain elected official, the mayor, whoever, city planning. They hired the lobbyists to get that. That's not right because again, we should treat everyone equally. If you buy a piece of property that you can develop that you can develop it, that's fine. You know what you're buying and you know what you can do. But
So, John, can I
someone should
interrupt you?
not have the ability to go beyond what they're supposed to do. The
Well, you take
restrictions, I think, is wrong.
John, you
It's,
take
it's,
like you take the Durst organization and Hallett's Point. You take some of these other things like where the Neptune Diner is. As I see an application is coming down the line.
yeah,
Develop that. Would you say, hey guys, Durst organization, no rezoning. The parcel was zoned X. You can't come along and call for a rezoning until the whole area gets rezoned. Is that kind of what your
correct.
policy is?
I think yeah, it's got to be fair and equal, and we've got to be consistent with areas where if you decide to rezone a particular block or area, the whole block and area gets rezoned, not just that one piece of property. That's not fair. Um,
Okay.
and building an 11-story building where Newtown is going to be an eyesore. But building a 5-story building over there is of right, and that landlord has the right to do that.
Hmm.
And then there's the people that are opposing any development whatsoever. Christian is completely wrong. Uh, I saw that in Sunnyside with my property, where they oppose any development. That's completely wrong because anything you have a right to do without getting a ULURP process, you have a right to do. No one should tell you what you should do with your property. These are, again, the propositions of the socialist communist groups that trying to level society where everyone gets a check, but no one owns anything, where everyone gets a handout, but nobody owns a business.
I mean, some might say you've got Republican viewpoints here. So why are you running as a Democrat?
That's a good one. I'm a I call myself a common sense Democrat.
Okay.
I call myself a true blue Democrat. I'm an old fashioned Democrat. Um, because if you help people, but the Democratic Party was never to be a socialist communist group. Now, there's a group of people trying to take power, basically take power. While it appeals to certain groups and individuals, it's not part of the Democratic Party. And I'm a moderate Democrat with common sense. And let's look at another issue that you may ask me of with cars. And while bikes are important, pedestrian uh, areas are important, There is a war on cars, and it's, to me, it's a hypocrisy because certain people can ride bikes. Okay, elderly people, seniors can't ride bikes, and when the weather is bad in New York, we're not in Florida. When the weather is bad and you got snow and ice, can you ride a bike? So let's be honest. But they want to eliminate cars because of fuel and this. But cars are taxed. You're taxed on your license plate, your gasoline, your registration. It's all taxed. Cars, if you eliminate cars, Christian, you're going to eliminate a significant part of the American commerce. You're going to eliminate jobs. And they talk about discriminating against people of color, whether you're black or brown. But most of the people that have cars are cab drivers, and they are people of color. So you would be taking their jobs away. Drivers and the van drivers who transport goods, you'd be taking their jobs away. And you see that is also occurring here through transportation alternatives, which they claim, well, that's transportation alternatives. But the goal is to eliminate the automobile. And that's not fair, again, for commerce, for the people that have jobs, and for the people that need a car because they're disabled and they can't go on a bike and they can't walk miles and miles. What they did on Crescent Street in the story is an abomination two-way bike lane on a major artery, Crescent Street. And I'm startled. I was there the other day for 40 minutes on one block looking, and I didn't see not one bike go up the two-way bike lane, but cars backed up, traffic galore, people unable to park because, you've seen the outdoor dining tables now taken over. And God forbid the ambulance needs to come through. You can't come through. Everything is congested because you got the bike lanes, two lanes. Cars can't move. You're creating a disastrous situation here because, again, no one wants to compromise. It's either one way or another way, and it's everything is to the extreme, and that has to change. We have to coexist. We cannot push certain interests greater than other interests. We cannot escalate that the bikes have to take command of the roads at the disadvantage of the cars and the trucks. We all have to live together. And that's the problem here. There's a tremendous divisiveness in our community that has to change. And, you better consider a candidate like me who's level-headed, who's fair, and not pontificating one position over another, not demonizing, not calling people racists because it's, politically popular and a good way to get votes, but to say, listen, let's view the whole situation, let's balance the equities, and let's make a decision that's fair and in the best interests of everyone in the community, not just some of the people, but everyone has to receive some kind of benefit.
Okay. John, what are your thoughts on the way community board members are selected?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, it's a very political process. The community board members are selected by their city council person. And, it's no different, Christian, than in Albany when you got the majority leader telling the members, to vote a certain way. Now, the way it works is that when there's a very popular or heated issue in the community, a development issue or this or that issue, a permit issue, the city council person will call his or her members that he or she selected, and ask them to vote a certain way. And if they don't vote that way, Christian, next time their term comes up, they get thrown off the board. So it's a political vestige of the city council person that needs to be changed. You need to have an election for people that should be on the council. You shouldn't be having people, just be selected by the city council person. That's wrong because, again, it's just a continuation of a political system and dynasty that we've seen in our communities, and you see it. And thank goodness we have term limits on the community boards.
Okay. What are your thoughts, John, on undocumented people being able to vote, or green card holders being able to vote in city elections? Do you think everybody should be able to get a say, or should it be or should it stick to, citizens only?
I think that you have to go through certain requirements. Now, green card holders have gone through the requirements of paying taxes and being socially responsible. They have a job. I would consider having them vote, but undocumented, illegal people should not be able to vote. Listen, a person born in this country cannot vote until the age of 18. So why, and there's debates back and forth, should it be 16, should it be 21? Why should why should someone who is here illegally, undocumented, be able to vote? I don't think so. But someone who has a green card, who's paying taxes, Social Security, yes, they should be able to vote because they're making that contribution to our society and culture.
Okay. John, you mentioned, your thoughts on, bikes and Crescent Street, etc. But just stepping away from bicycles for a moment, what do you think of the transportation network in Astoria and East Elmhurst? And what would you do to improve it potentially?
Well, first of all, it's a good point. First of all, we've got to put more police on our trains. Because people right now, I talk to people all the time. They won't go on the train right now because they fear being attacked, being assaulted. Well, you read the newspapers, watch the news, or being shoved into the subway. Right, so we got to make the subway safer. Uh, we have to do more. If you live near the train or near there's the buses, it's great. We have several trains in District 22, but if you're toward Vernon Boulevard, there's really no service. You're in the desert. Or if you're in Upper Ditmars, you're in the desert as well. So we need to have more um, access for these people. I love the BQX, where they proposed that bus service from
Raleigh, yeah.
Brooklyn to Astoria. I thought that's a great thing. And I would wish that with this federal money coming in, they allot the money toward that. That would be a great thing for the people near the water, near Vernon Boulevard. That would be a great thing. I would support the BQX, the proposal by the mayor to have a bus system coming from Brooklyn all the way to Astoria, Ditmars, and back. That's very important for the people in that area to have a viable, uh, reliable transportation system. That's important. For the upper part of Ditmars, we need to have more buses. The services are not enough. The buses are not reliable. They're too far in terms of when they arrive and depart. We need to put more resources in those areas for those people that deserve as much service as the people living near the subways or buses or locales that have the transportation. Um, it's not fair, and that encourages, because of the deserts, that encourages more cars, more pollution, because we're not providing that service to those people in our community, and I would fight to do more for them. But the BQX, I think it would be the best thing for District 22. It would be a huge asset for our community.
Okay. All right. John, are there any areas or any points that you'd like to bring up in terms of your campaign and your platform that, you'd
Yes,
like to bring to people's attention?
yes. I think that a couple more things. I mean, we've crime is a number one concern. Our community is only as good as the safety and how our residents feel. Schools, we've got to protect our children. Um, with the demonization of the police, there's also the council is going after the school safety officers. And I witnessed as a school board member the importance of school safety officers and having the police administer that, because When you had a system that was not run by the police, we had more problems in our schools with sexual molestation, bad characters coming in. When we had the police take over school safety, the safety officers were elevated. We got better quality officers. They did more for the children in the school. Our kids are constantly being surveilled and being attacked by gang members trying to recruit them. And so when you say you don't want metal detectors in schools, that's wrong. I mean, I go to court, I got to go through a metal detector. I have no problems with that. I go to a baseball game when it's going to open, or a basketball game, I have to go through metal detectors. I don't get offended. Why do they say that it's offensive to children to go through metal detectors? There are more guns in schools and knives. We need to have metal detectives to prevent these terrible things from happening. And they also want to take away the police supervision of traffic agents. It's important to have the traffic agents have a uniform that's similar to a police officer as a form of deterrence. They forget what deterrence is about. They want to change that because they're demonizing the police. They want them to wear the old brown uniforms, which caused a lot of problems for these traffic agents when they were assaulted and they were verbally abused and spat upon. They want that. They want to go back, and we can't go back. We know history, we appreciate history, and we've learned history so we don't repeat history. Um, you know, Overall, they talk about development. One of the biggest crimes in our area was what was done to Amazon, Christian. We had a select group of politicians who didn't care what the community felt. The community was in support of Amazon, but they went against Amazon for development. But you know what? Long Island City wouldn't be the talk it is and would never have been selected by Amazon if you didn't have the development that happened there. And to push Amazon out, where we lost a public school, they were going to give us a school, they were going to give us a park. Amazon recently put out $2 billion for affordable housing. Affordable housing, $2 billion. And we lost 20,000 jobs, union jobs. Um, Gary LaBarbera, the union representative, gave a speech to one of my lawyer committees, and he said we lost about 10,000 union jobs, from construction to supers to porters. We lost that. Not even to mention the peripheral businesses that suffered: the restaurants, the bars, the cafes, the dry cleaners, the laundromats, the cab drivers. But this was done by a select group of people with a union. It was the union that was involved with the supermarkets. They were opposed to Whole Foods that doesn't have a union. They stopped it to try to punish Amazon. It's all politics. But you know what? I'll say this. Our politicians cheat us, and they fail us when they put their interests above the community. And that's what happened with Amazon. They took their interests, their hunger for power and publicity, because they were on the news all the time, and they put it ahead of the interests of the community. And shame on them for that. Okay, shame on them for
Are
that.
you talking about
And the
Mike
candidates running in
Nieves?
this election who espouse that same view, and at least one or two were involved in that stopping of Amazon, should be ashamed for what they did. Because when you talk to every business in our community that's suffering because of taxes and fines, homeowners being taxed, to a point where they have to lose, they're going to have to leave the community. You see what's happening. People are leaving our community. They're leaving our state. They're leaving it because it's too much for them to pay fines. Christian, you know how hard it is to open up a business, a restaurant? People don't realize the money that you need. You have to hire architects, planners. You
Mm.
have to deal with the fire department, the fines with the fire department, the building department, every department. These are all vestiges of the city, bureaucratic vestiges that take taxpayer money, that take money away from businesses. You can't operate. It doesn't allow you to operate. It's become anti-business, and that's got to change. That's got to change. I don't know why we have an anti-business philosophy in this in this city, in this community. Everybody, the socialist, progressive, communists want to hand out checks, Bernie Sanders and company. And we can't allow that to happen. We don't have the money to hand out checks. We can't keep printing money. But more importantly, we need to support businesses, help businesses so they can hire people in the community and so they can succeed and the people can succeed. I was very fortunate to have my own business when I was a kid, delivering newspapers. I learned what it was to be a business person. I worked in a deli for most of my young life. You know, that experience helped me become a better citizen, become a more independent citizen, to become more of a person who supports business, not attacks business. The problem we have in our government, from looking at the mayor and a lot of these city council people, and even the people in Albany, these are generational politicians. These are people that live off the public role, Christian. They never had a business. They never worked in private sector because they could not, you got to understand, they could not survive, these people, but they have to live on the public dime, okay? And they're constantly, they move from one job to another. How is it fair, Christian, that, for example, Scott Stringer, our public advocate, how is it fair that he is the public advocate? We pay his salary, the taxpayers, yet he's campaigning for mayor. I'm sure your boss wouldn't allow you to campaign for office while paying you your salary to be at the Queen's Post to edit articles, publish articles. Why do we allow politicians to go job searches, have them go for these job searches while we're paying their salary? It's unheard of. Actually, it's a public theft if you come to think of it. So we have a lot of things wrong, and you know, we need term limits. Thank God we have them in the city council. We need them in Albany. We need them in every position because that's the only way we can get new people to come in and for discussions and debates like this today. If we didn't have term limits, we wouldn't be having this campaign, right? We'd have the same person in there forever. But this allows for a free exchange of information and ideas and to be able to debate, which is crucial to the American politic.
All right, John. Well, listen, on that note, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you very much, Christian Murray. And Queen's Post, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to meet the people.